Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 26.5 RC2, or Release Candidate 2. This should be the final version released to developers and public beta testers before it releases to the public next week. We'll talk about when to expect that a little bit later in the video, but this particular update is available for all iOS 26 supported devices if you're a developer or beta tester. It came in at 494.9 megabytes on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and Apple also released iPadOS 26.5 RC2 as well. So no other updates were released within RC2, just iOS and iPadOS. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So we'll go into Settings, then we'll go to General, Software Update, wait for it to load, go to More Details, and then tap on the version number. And as you can see, the build number is 23F77. And when going from an RC to an RC2, we don't expect many changes here or there. This is mostly going to be a bug fix update. However, there was one physical change I was able to find, and that has to do with a new splash screen the first time you open the Games app. You'll see it says what's new in Apple Games, recently downloaded, and achievement and score updates. So it talks about this, however, I believe these features were there before. I didn't see any other splash screens or physical changes throughout, but again, there are some bug fixes. When it comes to bug fixes, the first thing has to do with wallpapers. And within the wallpaper, we know that we're getting a new Pride wallpaper called Pride Luminance that's introduced with iOS 26.5. There was a bug with this where if we go into maybe this one and we go all the way to the right, there's a custom option here. And within the custom option, you can fully customize the colors you'd like to select up to 12 different colors. This color picker was disappearing from time to time. So this has been fixed now. So if you want to select maybe these colors, we'll select a few others here, maybe this one. We'll go back, select a few more. You can fully customize this however you'd like, again, up to about 12 colors or so. So you'll see there, we've selected all of them, and sometimes that color picker would go away when you were trying to customize it. So again, that's been resolved. Also keep in mind they've updated the Apple Watch to include the Luminance wallpaper as well, so if you go to the face gallery, you can see that here, where it shows off Pride Luminance, where sometimes these weren't showing up and you had to find Pride Luminance throughout your wallpaper. So it looks like they've finally added these, and they weren't necessarily available right away before, so those should show up correctly now. Also on iPad, it seemed to have resolved an issue where some iPads would lose cellular connectivity completely after they updated to iOS 26.4 or iPadOS 26.4. That's been resolved in the RC as well as RC2. In addition to that, when a device was set to a language that was not English, sometimes you would actually have an issue with the keyboard if the password prompt showed up. This now works properly, and also it fixes some trusted certificates where they would not be standard compliant, where it would just give you an error even though they were standard compliant. So that's something that's been resolved as well. As far as other bug fixes, I dare say this is actually smoother than RC. Sometimes I did get a little bit of stutter, especially when unlocking again and going through multiple pages, swiping back and forth, going into an app, swiping out. It seems like it's much more fluid and fast. Again, going back and forth to our widget page, going back and forth seems to be much better. The keyboard is also super smooth. So again, we'll go in here. This is iOS 26.5 RC2, and I keep typing 36 for some reason, but again, we can just go back and quickly change that. And you'll see it's smooth on iPhone 17 Pro Max. So it's working as you would expect. It's much better. Of course, they fixed it with previous updates, and you'll see how smooth it is just swiping home. So we'll go over here, swipe home, swipe again, and it goes back home, and it's nice and smooth. Oftentimes that would stutter before. As far as text to Siri, that's working properly still, giving suggestions here. Also, one other thing I tested is Apple CarPlay. I used it for about 20 minutes or so while I was driving, and it seemed to work much faster. Going into different music worked fine, where before sometimes it would stutter even with cellular connectivity, or even if you had the song downloaded, it seems like it's much better. However, it does seem like it fixed the wallpaper bug for me. We'll swipe home, it's vibrant. And again, it's vibrant here. However, some people have said it's not resolved, so let me know if it's working for you. In addition to this, we don't know if they've fixed the iPhone charging bug, where sometimes if you let your phone die, go down to 0% and then completely shut off, you wouldn't be able to plug it in and charge it that way, and the only way to revive it is with hard resetting, DFU mode, or using MagSafe. Hopefully this is resolved and it was just a software bug, but Apple has yet to acknowledge that. Also, one other thing I noticed is if we go into maybe messages and then I run my app settings shortcut here, it seems like it runs much faster this time around. And speaking of messages, if we go down to RCS, hopefully this fixes an issue where in some areas where you had encryption before, it's not working now. So far, I haven't seen it return, but it seems very hit or miss. Of course, it is in beta and specific to carriers and locale. So if you're in maybe the United States, sometimes it would work. Other places it works, but not everywhere just yet. But hopefully that's resolved soon or is just enabled on the remote side from Apple and then different carriers. Of course, this update does contain quite a few new features. The wallpaper I showed you, RCS end-to-end encryption, notification forwarding in the EU, as well as live activity notification forwarding, also transfer to Android updates, reminders updates, keyboard updates, updates to the App Store, as well as books and enterprise updates as well. So lots of things are fixed in this update, along with an iPad extension issue that's in Safari on iPad. So on the iPad, if we go maybe to our extensions up here, if you tap on an extension, oftentimes it wouldn't work properly and sometimes just crash the browser. That's been fixed in this update and seems even faster in 26.5 RC2, where if I tap on one password, it opens right to my passwords. So just keep that in mind. It seems like it's resolved finally, where it didn't work properly in 26.4.1 and hasn't worked for a little while. As far as other updates today, Apple did release an update for Apple Music Classical here, where it just says it contains stability and performance enhancements. So if you're using Apple Music Classical, just make sure you update. As far as anything else, well, we do expect some security updates, enterprise updates, and of course, we're just 1 month away from seeing iOS 27 Beta 1 for the first time, or iOS 27, as WWDC 2026 is just 1 month away. It takes place on June 8th. You'll see here, where we've got June 8th to the 12th, we expect a keynote on the 8th where we'll see iOS 27 for the first time and likely iOS 27 Beta 1. Now, as far as the public release of iOS 26.5, at this point, I would expect it as soon as Monday. If they do find additional issues, sometimes they push it off later in the week, but typically I would expect it Monday or Tuesday. Then we'll see iOS 26.6 Beta 1 either later next week or the following week, and of course, iOS 27 Beta 1 in June, running concurrently with iOS 26 betas as well throughout the summer, with a public release of iOS 27 typically in September, around the iPhone 18 launch. Now, if you're wondering if you should install iOS 26.5 RC2, at this point, if you're on RC1 or any previous version of iOS 26.5, definitely install it, provide feedback if you're having issues. But if you're on iOS 26.4.2 or earlier, you could try it out at this point as it's typically safe, but just keep in mind it still technically isn't out to the public. So if you do have some issues, that could be normal and you'll want to report those. But it seems to be pretty stable at this point. As I mentioned before, performance is nice and smooth. There's an occasional hiccup from time to time. You may have already seen that, but things like ProMotion are nice and smooth. And if we go back here, you'll see swiping home like that is smooth, and general performance seems to be pretty good. When it comes to the overall heat, it's staying nice and cool as you would expect. However, it did just install an update, so I would expect it to process an index in the background, give it a few days and see how it is. We'll talk about it in the weekend follow-up video, but we'll have to give it at least half a day or so to see what it's like. When it comes to battery life, well, again, we'll have to take a few days to see what that's like as well, but let's go ahead and take a look at battery on RC1 so far. If we go to battery health, I have 100% capacity with 79 cycles. If we take a look at my usage, yesterday I had 2 hours and 45 minutes of screen active time, 1 hour and 25 minutes of screen idle time, and used 51% of the battery. So far today, I'm using less battery, so that's great to see, but again, it may take a few days to notice if it's really improved. As far as overall storage, let's take a look at that. So again, we'll go back, we'll go into Settings, General, and then iPhone Storage. If we scroll down here on the left, we have iOS 26.5 Beta 4 actually on this device. You'll see that it's about the same size. This was the same size last time with just a slight increase in overall size to 14.24 gigabytes, so no real change there, and total size is 21.77. With system data using 8.79 gigabytes, and that's pretty typical. That goes up and down as I've mentioned before. Now, I completed benchmarks, and these are some of the lowest scores I've seen, despite it feeling super smooth. This makes me think that there's quite a few processes still going on in the background, where you'll see I had 3,676 for single core, 9,580 for multi-core, and I ran it 2 additional times. So I got as low as 9,393, where typically I would expect this to be around 10,000. So we'll have to check this later on in the weekend follow-up video, where we'll see if everything's ready and see what the benchmarks are like then, as everything does feel nice and fast at this point. So that's everything with iOS 26.5 RC2. They've fixed a few bugs like we would expect, and maybe we'll have even a different build number once it releases to the public later next week. So let me know how it's going for you in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.